The corporate sides of Blizzard Entertainment, Activision, and Xbox are all losing some power. Overwatch's developers have decided they do not want to be blindsided again. The layoffs of 2024 were catastrophic, they deeply hurt that team, and they killed any chance of PvE, so now that team has taken action. Here's what that means. 200 developers are banding together to make sure that their management are held accountable, that staff are protected, and that they're able to make the best games they can. Because funnily enough, folks, putting years of your life into something only to have it be cancelled along with you and your team being fired is what happened to masses of the Overwatch development team. It is why we did not get the Overwatch 2 that we wanted, that we were presented. It's why I titled this video Overwatch 2 is dead, because the team is now moving on and the Overwatch 2 that was promised will never happen. And that means that, of course, the remaining staff want to protect themselves. All of that would be great news if we didn't have Microsoft leadership in the other side of the negotiating table, because in the last 3 years, they've been accused of a lot of sketchy behavior toward their unionizing staff. So much so, the developers are considering material actions against their employer, such as strikes. And this is all in spite of Xbox's promise of neutrality. Because while the Overwatch team has succeeded and the Warcraft team has succeeded, there are grim reports from elsewhere within Xbox. And if you care about things like, say, your video games having good quality assurance, you should care about this. And look, I know that I am currently recording a video, right? And it's a video about unions in America. The comments here may be fun, but I would just say consider this. You know all that profit? All the line going up, you know the way it doesn't feel like it trickles into your games, and that means you feel like you're taken for a ride by these companies? Say, take EA. They recently slashed development staff on Apex, Jedi, a Titanfall incubation project, another Respawn project, and their customer experience teams. You'd think they were struggling, but no, they were not struggling. That year, they spent $2.5 billion on stock buybacks. I am not here to say that unions are perfect in every case, and that just more union and more powerful union everywhere all the time will somehow make everything better. No, things are about balance, and there is no doubt that the power imbalance here is vast. And in a world where Clara Obscura, Ghost of Tsushima, and Baldur's Gate 3 show us the tangible product and consumer benefits of cultivating talent and treating teams well, in contrast to the typical AAA, I think there absolutely is a place for developers to band together. Let's begin with Xbox's promise, and that is of neutrality. That's the attitude that Microsoft promised they would take towards unions back in 2022. Now, at the time, they wanted to make sure they had as few blockers as possible to the Activision Blizzard acquisition, so they worked with the Communication Workers of America to draft principles that would make sure workers would be protected. Because, you know, that would help them look good in front of the regulators and they could buy the thing that they wanted, so now Call of Duty money would be Satya Nadella money. Woohoo! We of course know how all that went with the acquisition, but here's the thing. Now that that acquisition is through, the value of fully living by all of those principles has somewhat decreased. And to make sure you're not out of the loop, here's a summary of things. So the principles are this: that staff would not be treated differently if they wanted to join a union, would be given easy methods to discuss and access union membership, would be guaranteed anonymity if they wanted, and would seek arbitration between Microsoft and the CWA on any disagreements. Now, there is good news here. And that good news is that staff have exercised those rights in many cases over the last 3 years. We've seen unions pop up, and before hitting the whole Xbox being dodgy angle, because we're going to hit that and hit it pretty hard because it seems they have been really dodgy, we should cover the latest one, which is a success, and it's that of the Overwatch team. Overwatch isn't the first. Activision Blizzard QA unionized, then World of Warcraft, like the whole WoW dev team, and now Overwatch. And per those principles that I mentioned, Microsoft seem to have not gotten in their way. The new union, called the Overwatch Game Makers Guild, had approval from an overwhelming majority of the studio's union membership, and now they've collected under the Communication Workers of America banner. And like Warcraft, this covers many disciplines, right? Design, production, engineering, art, sound, and quality assurance. And I would say it also feels quite well timed. I think Overwatch 2's original version is firmly dead, that's why I titled that video that way. Now, though, with Stadium, that team is moving from stewardship of a absolutely, as we would say over here, banjaxed shit show, and now they're moving to authorship, making something new within Overwatch. That's good. Thumbs up. Right? They finally crawled out of the sheer hell that IP has faced, and that hell was a motivating factor. A VFX artist called Frank summed it up by directly calling out the massive layoff wave as a major impetus for basically them banding together. And even if you're someone who doesn't care about the conditions under which the thing you enjoy is made, well, this is good for the game that you play. It kind of means the people who make it are a little bit more safe and stable, and they have a little bit more bargaining power. That means they can fight for their best interest, which very often will be yours. How many times does something come out early because up top demands, and it just hasn't made sense? It's crashed and burned, and it's hurt you, the customer. That's the sort of thing that we do not want. Those cuts killed your hopes of the Overwatch 2 that you wanted. They primarily hit the PvE team. They were pushed to deliver a product that was sold terribly by management before then being punished for it. And to top that all off, the whole studio was then punished whenever management changed their compensation scheme. That feels bad. And why should you care? Well, do you know who doesn't do things like that? Larian. Do you know who's used every award ceremony and interview opportunity that he has had to reinforce how this AAA bullshit of chewing through staff is robbing you of good games? Oh, it's Van, the CEO and founder of Larian. And with that in mind, we now turn to Xbox's other acquisition and the examples of Microsoft perhaps being bad. I begin this segment with a quote. It's become increasingly clear that although Microsoft tries to position itself as a good faith employer, there's another story being told behind the scenes at the bargaining table. Now, that's a quote that comes from Autumn Mitchell. He's a senior QA tester and he's part of the 300-strong Zenimax Workers United Union who are still trying to reach a deal. And when I say still, I really do mean it. They've been trying since their January 2023 formation. So just 2 years and no deal. That won't feel good, but of course here's the thing, and you've likely thought of it as well. Microsoft promised to recognize these unions and let them organize. They never made a promise to give them what they want. And that applies not just to Zenimax. Raven Software were the first union to form under Xbox in 2022, but as of August 2024, they reported the same thing, to quote, bad faith bargaining. But then they actually went further. They filed a complaint with the National Labor Relations Board. In that, they alleged that Microsoft had engaged in, quote, concerted activities. Now, that effectively means retaliation or punishment against union members. That obviously goes against the principles that Microsoft agreed to. Remember, the principles that they agreed to help them do the merger that they wanted. And this is the atmosphere in which these discussions are taking place. Because of that, the Zenimax Workers Union have taken the next step, where, with 94% approval, they have authorized strike action as a threat for their bargaining committee. And this matters, because these are the QA teams behind games like Doom: The Dark Ages and Indiana Jones. That matters. That is a threat that carries weight for Microsoft's bottom line. And they've proved that they are ready to use it, because that group participated in a one-day strike back in November because of restrictive return-to-office policies and outsourcing concerns. Those outsourcing concerns matter, and we are going to talk about them. I've been a lifelong fan of Halo. My God, have some of Microsoft's policies hurt that franchise as well. So now there's a standoff. Microsoft can negotiate with the committee to address their concerns, or they can risk the consequences, which could be less QA. You know, the one thing that we don't need. A lot of people may say, all right, well, it's less QA because the QA workers are striking. Yeah, but they're also striking for a reason. Funnily enough, most of them would like to do the job that they're doing under good conditions. And where the stakes get higher is this stuff might go beyond just the QA at Zenimax, because under the banner of the Communication Workers of America are the World of Warcraft development team, Raven Software QA, Zenimax Online Studios, and many, many, many more. If they decide to act in solidarity with the ZWU, it could be a humongous hit to Xbox. Basically, kind of like strike action domino theory could happen. Now the thing is, Xbox is giving them no reason not to, it appears right now anyway. And these are the people, remember, who are fighting to make their jobs better, and they're getting nowhere. And do you know what that's going to mean? It means that the games are not going to get better either. I didn't bring up Larian just to glaze them for making a good game. I brought them up because they're a company who have made a public point of treating their people well and actually giving a shit about retention, about not just doing random massive layoffs. That's led to a world-class genre-defining game. We should have more of those, and that's why this shit matters. This stuff, of course, is not a silver bullet. I'm not saying that a union will magically just solve everything and hey, Overwatch is back now. I'm not saying that. Because as Xbox have shown, they have all the power right now and they can just stall shit. And changes at the National Labour Relations Board does mean that there's even less institutional power backing the workers against management if they do choose to act. But at its core, it's about recognizing that the people who make the games that we love actually deserve to be able to do that safely and securely. So many instances, our games suffer because of the whims of a market that cares too much about the next quarter, not even the next 5 years. And look, I'm basically a capitalist, right? I basically am, okay? Do you know, like, so much of this shit pisses me off? It feels like it's corrupting the spirit of what capitalism is supposed to do. I know, that's going to get me a lot of flack. That's cool. I love you guys, especially when you're giving me flack. That's how we all learn. My point, though, would be, even if we're going to say that the shareholder returns matter, why are we, talking about next quarter instead of the next 5 years? Because surely the next 5 years is what will give you strategically meaningful results that are transformationally better for your shareholders. Why are we optimizing the wrong thing? Why are we doing it at the expense of the people who we hire to actually do jobs? That is a problem. And you know what? I don't need to tell you what happens whenever staff don't have a good working environment, because it's almost statistically impossible that the games you love have been untouched by the deep rot that has set in within this industry. And you know what? It gives me a bit of heart that the 500-person World of Warcraft union exists. Because guess what? If more, he's not there now anymore, but if more Bobby Kotick style bullshit or whatever, right, was to happen or was to fall on that team, well, you know what? That team has them by the goddamn balls, because World of Warcraft drives a lot of revenue. When those people band together, they can actually hit corporate back where it hurts. And I don't think I need to explain to gamers why that matters, because, well, we play video games. We know that balance and tuning is important. And in a way, this is basically that, but applied to how the game is made. And on the topic of this stuff mattering, hit up this video next. It's about Ubisoft and Tubisoft, because Nubisoft is actually comprised of Ubisoft owning Tubisoft. That all may sound completely insane and unhinged, but it's actually true. And you can find out by clicking the link that's about to replace my face.